A cocktail good enough to raise the dead? Most definitely. We're gonna make the delicious and refreshing Corpse Reviver number 2, and we're starting right now. G'day folks, my name's Tim, and welcome to Tim and Tonic, where we discover the world's best gins and how to drink them. So a cocktail with a number in the name kind of implies that there's more than one of them. And there definitely is. The Corpse Reviver is a whole family of drinks. It's been around since all the way back in 1861. But I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. The number 2 version is by far the best, and I mean by far. Some of the other versions are truly terrible drinks. I mean, awful. They absolutely bear no resemblance to the delicious, refreshing, little bit herbaceous and complex drink that we're gonna make today. The name is kind of cool though, right? And it's not because it's some reference to zombies or literally reviving corpses. It's actually a little tongue-in-cheek reference because all of this family of cocktails were known for their ability as hangover cures. And this number 2 version that we're making today comes from the 1930s Savoy cocktail book, where bartender and author Harry Craddock wrote that 4 of these taken in swift succession will unrevive the corpse again. Now, I don't recommend that anyone knocks back 4 cocktails really quickly, but they are super delicious, so let's get on and make one. Okay, so ingredients wise, first thing, obviously, you're gonna need some gin. After all, this channel is all about the gin. You can actually use any dry gin in this recipe. I chose to go with Plymouth because I just really like the way it ties together the kind of citrus notes, the earthy notes, and the herbaceous notes absolutely perfectly, but any dry gin, especially London Dry, is gonna work amazingly well. Second ingredient you're gonna need for a little bit of sweetness is some Cointreau or triple sec. Cointreau is actually a type of triple sec. This is just gonna add, like I said, the sweetness to the drink, but also a little bit of orangey, citrusy flavor. Next ingredient I've got is some Lillet Blanc. Now, the original recipe actually calls for something called Quina Lillet. Now, Lillet Blanc isn't Quina Lillet, it's what came after Quina Lillet. Quina Lillet tasted a little bit different back in the day. It had more quinine in it, which Lillet Blanc doesn't really have as much of anymore. So if you want to make a more true representation, you could go for something like Cocky Americano, which is said to taste a little bit more like that original Quina Lillet, but Lillet Blanc makes an absolutely delicious Corpse Reviver number 2, and sometimes a little bit easier to get your hands on. And then the last of the alcoholic ingredients you're gonna need is some absinthe, which I put into this little dasher bottle here. Now, some people are a little bit skeptical when it comes to absinthe in drinks, and because they've either had a bad experience with it or they've heard these stories about it being hallucinogenic or something like that. Even they just don't like the taste because it tastes like aniseed or that licorice kind of flavor. But don't worry, none of it's true, and the beauty of this recipe is it just has a tiny amount. That's why I put it into the dasher bottle. So it's gonna add that herbaceous complexity without it being the strongest flavor. Think of it more like a seasoning, you know, you put some fennel seeds in your stock or your sauce. Same thing here, we're gonna put some absinthe as our seasoning for this cocktail. And finally, to make this drink delicious and refreshing, we're gonna need some fresh lemon juice. Now, the beauty of this recipe is really in its simplicity. It's what we call an equal parts cocktail, which basically just means all these different ingredients are more or less in the same quantities. So it doesn't really get much easier than this. First off, we're gonna need our gin. We have 25 mils or 3/4 of an ounce. Now the Cointreau or triple sec, same thing again. We're gonna need 25 mils or 3/4 of an ounce. Now you probably spotted the theme here, Lillet Blanc, 25 mils or 3/4 of an ounce. And once again, same quantities when it comes to lemon juice. We have 25 mils or 3/4 of an ounce. And then the last thing, which isn't actually in equal parts, like I said, the absinthe, just a little bit of seasoning. I put a good 2 dashes. Now with that absinthe, if you don't have that little dasher bottle, another method that people use is the rinse, where you pour it into the glass, swirl it around, and then pour it out of the glass. That's totally fine too. You'll see many recipes call for that. It just gives you that subtle hint of absinthe without it being like a whole bar spoon. If you're feeling fancy, you've got one of those little spray atomizers, you can totally use that too. Now let's get some ice in here. And give it a good shake. Grab yourself a nice chilled cocktail glass, and now you're gonna wanna fine strain it. Best garnish for me is nice and simple, little peel of lemon, squeezing that straight over the top. And that's it, it's that simple. Corpse Reviver number 2, let's see how it tastes. Oh man, I don't know about a hangover cure, but definitely if I did feel hungover, I don't think I'd have any problem drinking that. You see, the problem with all those other corpse revivers out there is they're super boozy, like whiskey or brandy versions. And I don't know about you, but if I was hungover, I don't think I'd want to be drinking drinks like Manhattans or Old Fashions or anything like that. Oh, but this on the other hand, bright, citrusy, refreshing, but complex at the same time. You've got that aromatized wine, the Lillet Blanc or Cocky Americano, whichever one you went with. You've got that tiny, tiny, tiny bit of absinthe coming through, which just adds that richness, herbaceous notes, complexity. Oh, look at that. A few sips and it's pretty much gone. So guys, if you like the sound of the Corpse Reviver number 2, don't worry, there's plenty more where that came from. Click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new videos as they come out. In the meantime, click through the playlist here to see a whole bunch more cocktail videos. Cheers guys, see you next time.